And all new at 5:30 tonight, Albany residents searching for answers and solutions after a string of violence in the city this week. Tonight on Power and Politics, Tom Eschen is sitting down with Tayshawn Murdoch, director at the Center for Law and Justice, to learn how his organization views the challenges residents are feeling and what needs to change moving forward.
Thank you very much. And Tayshawn joins us now. Thanks so much for coming on with us today.
No problem.
Let's begin with what's been going on here in the city over the course of the last week. After a pretty quiet beginning to the month of January, 4 acts of violence this week in about a 48-hour period. I'm curious, how do you respond to that? And more importantly, what are some of the solutions here? We had some young teens that were shot just in Albany this week.
Yeah, I think it's heartbreaking, and we're seeing continued acts of violence all across the city of Albany, but in particular the South End. And for a while I've been saying, hey, we need to do better at finding ways to pour resources into areas where we know that acts of violence take place. We know that youth need programming, and we know that there are a need for services like mental health support, individuals with housing, and so many other things that are needed to prevent and to support with reducing violence.
You mentioned the youth programs, and I think that obviously is something that you see as a need here. What does that look like? I guess, what do you think the status is right now when it comes to that, and where could an enhancement be? At least a quick fix even.
Right, so I don't think that our youth programs really identify with our youth in our communities. I've been saying this in several meetings that I've been in, that we as adults and programs need to take a minute, step back, and invite youth in and really listen to what their needs are. Because when you listen, then you're able to really identify their needs and then create programming based on what their needs are. But when you don't do that, then we're creating programs that youth don't want to participate in. The other end of that is making sure that individuals who are hired in these organizations and programs look like the kids that they're serving. If they don't look like the kids that they're serving, and the youth cannot relate to those individuals, the youth aren't going to participate.
Something else that you've spoken about in the past in the center has talked about sort of the relationship between the law enforcement and the community. Do you think that's heading in the right direction right now, the wrong direction? What direction are we headed in when it comes to that relationship?
I think we're at a standstill in the sense of where the Albany Police Department can go as it relates to community policing. As I've said before, I think community policing is some of the answer to that. But I think in years past, we've had individuals within the police department who haven't been committed to community policing. We know that community policing works. If you put police officers in communities, not to police people, but to build relationships, to ensure that people feel like they have a comfortable person to go to, you will see change. But what we see is a police state. We put a police car on the end of the corner, and we hope that crime will be deterred by that. But we know that it was done in the past, it's being done in the current, and it's not working. So
instead of having the car in the corner, maybe is it an officer on the block or an officer that is there continually to kind of walk around and is that the idea when you talk about community policing?
So I think that's part of it, but I also think that officers should live within the city of Albany. That was something that I heard a few weeks ago, and it is a smart idea. When you live in the neighborhood, you understand the needs of the neighborhood. You meet people, you walk to the store, you walk to the park, your family lives here, and so you have a real reason to build relationships with your neighbors. When you don't live here, you know, you come to work and then you leave at 5 o'clock.
I'd imagine then you align a little bit more with Brendan Cox, the interim police chief, than Eric Hawkins, because Brendan Cox has been Mr. Community Policing. That's been his mantra since he started back up here for the first time in a few years. Would that be correct in terms of the previous chief to now with having Cox and
yeah, I mean, I think we're optimistic in hopes that the current chief, Brendan Cox, will move forward with community policing. But what we've also seen in past is that we've had our political leaders and individuals in positions like the chief who have said, hey, I'm for all of these things, and then we see no progress. And so what we're looking for is not only for political leaders and community leaders to say, hey, we understand that these issues are happening, but what now we're looking for is true action. Action that actually makes a difference in the communities that need it most.
We're going to get to this after, but I will say that we're going to talk about the hundreds of millions of dollars the state is proposing for the city and how you think that should be spent. But before we could go for the portion that's going to be on our newscast here, I want to ask you about Black History Month and what the center has been doing and how the message you want to send and for people to hear.
So our message this year is about community empowerment, and so we are showing films throughout Black History Month centered around community empowerment, but also around reminding people of the history that brought us to this place, good and bad. And so we're really excited about that. And this year's film series is, of course, dedicated to Dr. Green. So every film that we're showing, she has a part in some way in each one of those.
You talk about history, you talk about community empowerment, and you look at a federal administration that has tried at one point to get rid of the teaching of Tuskegee Airmen as a part of the Air Force, and then also the erasure of the Black History Month, even from some calendars. Does that community empowerment, does that play into sort of addressing and responding to this new federal government?
Absolutely, but it also plays into local government right here. My belief is that local government has gotten so used to nonprofit organizations saying the issues of the people, but the people have to be able to come out and say, these are our issues, and we need you to step up to the plate as you either have decided to or been elected to. And so our goal is to say, hey, listen, here is the facts. And we want to educate you so that you can be the group and the people that stand in front of people like the mayor and the police chief and say, hey, listen, I'm not standing for these issues and you need to do better.
Tayshawn, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Back to you.
Thank you, Tom. And don't forget, you can listen to our Power in Politics podcast every week. Scan the QR code there on the screen and listen wherever you get your podcasts.